Gildan Media presents Your Coach in a Box, affordable, life-changing audio programs.
This is David Meerman Scott. My co-author Brian Halligan and I want to thank you for listening to our audiobook sample, Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. We hope you enjoy it, and we hope you want to listen to the entire audiobook. Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. What every business can learn from the most iconic band in history. Introduction. There's nothing like a Grateful Dead concert. This was first used in the liner notes of the Grateful Dead album Europe 72. Picture a summer evening and imagine that you're in a sold-out arena. The audience members have been partying all afternoon in the hot sunshine, hanging with old friends, meeting new ones, drinking, laughing, smoking. The collective anticipation in the arena feels positively electric, enhanced by the sounds from the stage, which hums with tens of thousands of watts of pure power ready to rock. The house lights go down and a cheer goes up. Hundreds of tiny red lights on the band's onstage equipment are visible, blinking on and off like fireflies as the musicians shuffle onto the stage. Phil Lesh, Bob Weir, and Jerry Garcia plug in and noodle around a bit on their guitars, their backs to the audience. The two drummers settle in behind their kits. One sends out a cosmic boom from a bass drum, and we in the audience feel it as much as we hear it. A cheer for the boom. Some people try to discern what song the band will open with based on the quasi-riffs now being played. Setlist savants predict the opener to their friends based on the algorithm they used that morning to query databases of every song ever played by the band. Then, quietly, slowly at first, the band coalesces around a familiar tune. They turn to face the crowd. The lights come up, the volume is cranked, and 20,000 people collectively begin to boogie. Another Grateful Dead concert has left the station. The Grateful Dead emerged out of San Francisco in 1965 during an exceptional period in American history. The Vietnam War was escalating and the civil rights movement was in full swing. Young people were beginning to question authority in large numbers, and the counterculture scene was growing. The band grew in popularity during the late 1960s, releasing their first album in 1967 and playing Woodstock in 1969. But unlike many other bands that faded away or broke up, the Grateful Dead played on into the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, with band members continuing to play together today, gaining new fans along the way, including us. We decided to take our fandom to a new level and write about the Grateful Dead. However, we're certainly not the first people to identify the Grateful Dead as a band worthy of study. In the past few years, a wave of interest in the band has emerged in a wide variety of fields. A conference at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst called Unbroken Chain, The Grateful Dead in Music, Culture, and Memory brought together scholars, fans, artists, performers, and members of the extended Grateful Dead family for the first major university conference on the enduring legacy of the Grateful Dead experience. The conference included more than 50 presenters in 20 panel discussions, ranging from music composition and improvisation to an examination of the band's business model. There were musical performances, gallery exhibits, and presentations, and the conference served to legitimize the study of the band. Brian attended the conference, and it got his mind spinning about the possibilities of the band as a marketing example. Then in 2009, the University of California at Santa Cruz acquired the Grateful Dead Archive, considered one of the most significant collections of 20th century American popular culture. The archive includes 600,000 linear feet of books, recording, business correspondence, posters, tickets, photographs, films, stage props, and more. The acquisition prompted excitement from scholars in many disciplines eager to gain inside knowledge for their work in sociology, history, art, musicology, and business theory, both within and beyond the Grateful Dead community. In March 2010, The New York Historical Society opened the first large-scale exhibition of materials from the Grateful Dead archive called Grateful Dead, now playing at the New York Historical Society, chronicling the history of the band, its music, and the phenomenal longevity of the Grateful Dead community through original art and documents related to the band, its members, performances, and productions. We were both thrilled to participate in a private tour of the exhibition led by Grateful Dead drummer Bill Kreutzmann. The exhibit, which ran through July 2010, explored, in part, the band's refusal to follow established music industry rules. It is this marketing savvy, including direct contact with fans, a focus on touring, and other innovations that we profile in detail within these pages. So why all the fuss? Well, the Grateful Dead played over 2,300 live concerts from 1965 through 1995, establishing the band as the most popular touring act in rock history. While the band also saw success with 13 studio albums, it was the live concert experience that set them apart. The Grateful Dead created a free-form live sound that combined the elements of many different musical styles: rock, country western, improvisational jazz, gospel, and more, to create a completely new and unique sound. The band played about 500 songs live over a 30-year career, and of those, 150 were original compositions. The band covered songs from such diverse artists as Bob Dylan, All Along the Watchtower, Chris Christopherson, Me and Bobby McGee, Johnny Cash, Big River, Steve Winwood, Dear Mr. Fantasy, Chuck Berry, Johnny B. Good, and the Beatles, Day Tripper. Unlike most rock acts that played the same songs in the same order every show, you never knew what Grateful Dead you would get in a given night, and that surprise element was part of the Grateful Dead experience. A Grateful Dead concert was more than just, well, a concert. It was a happening, a destination, and for the most die-hard fans, it was their lives. Indeed, some people followed the band from city to city, attending each of the roughly 100 shows that they played in a typical year. Many supported themselves by selling goods, food, drink, drugs, or Grateful Dead-themed merchandise in the parking lot scene at each venue. Grateful Dead shows were a place where people bonded. The traveling caravan was a true community, a collaboration between fans and the band, providing Deadheads with a sense of belonging, as well as some damned fine music. The concert experience was a counterculture adventure, and many people treated the shows as a pilgrimage. Inside the arenas, 20,000 fans would come together as one organism, bonding in a way not unlike that seen in a religious movement. Marketing lessons. In the 1960s, the Grateful Dead pioneered many social media and inbound marketing concepts that businesses across all industries use today. The band made a series of difficult and often unpopular decisions in order to differentiate themselves from their competition by providing the highest quality service to their fans. They were not simply selling a product. The Dead pioneered a freemium business model, allowing concert attendees to record and trade concert tapes, building a powerful word-of-mouth fan network powered by free music. Instead of obsessing over recording, the Dead became the most popular touring band of their era, selling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of tickets and creating a highly profitable corporation in the process. Without hit records, the Grateful Dead achieved elite success, becoming one of the most iconic rock bands of its era and inventing a brand that democratically included their consumers and literally co-created a lifestyle for Deadheads. We're eager to write about the Grateful Dead because we've identified many lessons in what the band has been doing over more than 40 years that can be applied today. These lessons are an important tool for helping to understand the new marketing environment in a language and with examples that are familiar to all. The Grateful Dead is one huge case study in contrarian marketing. Most of the band's many marketing innovations are based on doing the exact opposite of what other bands and record labels are doing at the time. Here are just a few examples of what you'll learn in these pages. Number 1. Rethink traditional industry assumptions. Rather than focus on record albums as a primary revenue source, with touring to support the album sales, the Dead created a business model focused on touring. Now, entirely new opportunities emerge for those willing to challenge established business models. The Grateful Dead teaches us that business model innovation is frequently more important than product innovation. 2. Turn your customers into evangelists. Unlike nearly every other band, the Grateful Dead not only encouraged concert-goers to record their live shows, they actually established taper sections where fans' equipment could be set up for the best sound quality. When nearly every other band said no, the Grateful Dead created a huge network of people who traded tapes in pre-internet days. The broad exposure led to millions of new fans and sold tickets to the live shows. Today, as many companies experiment with offering valuable content on the web, the Grateful Dead teaches us that when we free our content, more people hear about our company and eventually do business with us. 3. Bypass accepted channels and go direct. In the early 1970s, the Grateful Dead were one of the first bands to create a mailing list where they announced tours to fans first. Later, they established their own ticketing office, providing the most loyal fans with the best seats in the house. The Grateful Dead teaches us that building a community and treating customers with care and respect drives passionate loyalty. 4. Build a huge, loyal following. The Grateful Dead let their audience define the Grateful Dead experience. Concerts were happening, a destination where all 20,000 or more audience members were actually part of the experience. Making fans an equal partner in a mutual journey, the Grateful Dead teaches us that our community defines who we are. In an era of instant communications on Twitter, blogs, and the like, we learn that companies cannot force a mindset on their customers. Marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead will show you how to think and market like the band, which is to think and market differently from your competition. Each chapter presents and analyzes a marketing concept practiced by the Dead and provides a real-world example of a company employing that concept today. We also include a Rock On section at the end of each chapter with to-do ideas for you. Hour-long strange trips. I first heard the band's music just before I started high school. My next-door neighbor, a college student, played Grateful Dead music loudly from his bedroom window all summer. The music grew on me, and I saw my first live concert on January 17, 1979 in New Haven, Connecticut. I was hooked for life, collecting live concert tapes and seeing the band another 41 times. Brian was in high school when he first was indoctrinated into the band by his friend, who blasted the Grateful Dead while they painted houses on Cape Cod during the summer. Brian hitchhiked to his first concert in Saratoga Springs, New York, and that concert sparked a lifelong love. He's seen over 100 shows since. We first met in 2007 after Brian had read my book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, and invited me to the HubSpot offices to talk modern marketing. We both saw the amazing potential of web marketing and had focused our businesses in the emerging area. When Brian saw a Grateful Dead sticker on my notebook computer, we also bonded as Deadheads. When you've shared the common experience of having seen dozens of Grateful Dead shows, there's an instant kinship. And perhaps more importantly, we were both lifelong Grateful Dead fans. Our bond was cemented when, a few weeks later, I had a spare ticket to a sold-out Phil Lesh and Friends show. Lesh is the Grateful Dead's bassist, and I sent it to Brian, who until then was ticketless. Not only had we both been going to concerts for years, we had both been inspired by the great marketing examples set by the Grateful Dead. In each of my previous 5 books, there's been a reference to the band, and most speeches I've delivered since 2007 include riffs on how the Grateful Dead culture of losing control benefits organizations of all kinds. At HubSpot, the market position that Brian built for his company around the new category of inbound marketing was significantly influenced by how the Grateful Dead created its own music category. They watched competitors but never followed them. In March 2010, we collaborated on a free webinar called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead. We quietly announced the virtual gig and were amazed when 1,700 people signed up with almost no promotion. So on April Fool's Day, taking a page out of the Grateful Dead concert playbook, we improvised a discussion on the band's marketing and what companies can learn from it. The feedback from over 300 tweets and a bunch of blog posts was so overwhelmingly positive, we knew we had to do more. This book was born. Playing in the band. We've organized the book into short, snappy chapters, each focused on one element of the Grateful Dead's marketing. We explain how the band pioneered a technique and provide details, and then give a modern example of how an organization is using the strategy today. Although we've grouped the chapters into sections, we've written them as standalone units that you should feel free to listen to in any order. After all, the Grateful Dead hated authority and encouraged independent behavior in fans, so who are we to tell you how to listen to the book? A note about our use of the band's name. With the 1995 death of founding member and spiritual leader Jerry Garcia, the band's name, The Grateful Dead, was retired when referring to live concerts. While the name continued to be used for the sales of recordings and merchandise, the Grateful Dead would never play again, and musicians from the band pursued solo careers. From 1998 to 2002, surviving members occasionally reformed and toured under the name The Other Ones. In 2003, the Other Ones changed their name to The Dead, and then in 2009, a smaller offshoot called Further was formed. For simplicity, throughout the book, we refer to the Grateful Dead in present tense, choosing not to draw a distinction between touring band names over the last 15 years, and instead treating the Grateful Dead as a band with a continuous 45-year history. The music never stopped. We've enjoyed working on this book because it combines our personal friendship, our love for the Grateful Dead, and our intense interest in marketing into one focused project. We hope that our 50 combined years of intense interest in the Grateful Dead, together with decades of marketing experience, has created a book that's valuable to both Grateful Dead fans and marketers alike.
Chapter 7. Establish a new category. Go to the iTunes store and you'll find 23 different categories of music: alternative, classical, hip-hop, rap, rock. Most bands in their music fit into one of these categories. Led Zeppelin is rock, while Taylor Swift is country. The Grateful Dead, on the other hand, defied existing category boundaries by combining various genres of music and melding it all with extreme improvisation to create their own unique sound, and in the process, their own musical category. Early in the band's history, the Grateful Dead teamed up with Ken Kesey and provided music for his acid tests, elaborate parties where the participants dropped acid. The acid tests weren't concerts where people came and watched the band perform. Rather, the audience members were expected to be part of the performance and provide entertainment to the other attendees. This tradition of the crowd becoming part of the performance continued long after the Grateful Dead grew beyond being Ken Kesey's house band. A big part of the Grateful Dead's value proposition was not just what happened on the stage, but the collective experience you had being entertained by the audience with whom you were having a unique collective experience. From those early days, the Grateful Dead became known for their extended riffs and improvisational jams, which often melded jazz, country, bluegrass, psychedelic, and rock. Because the resulting fusion of genres defied set categories, the band's followers came up with a new category, jam band, a term now used to classify bands such as Phish that followed in the Grateful Dead's footsteps. The Grateful Dead crossed musical boundaries and created their own musical sound, setting themselves apart from other bands. By innovating across musical boundaries, the Grateful Dead stood out from other bands of their time, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and so on, a uniqueness that carried them through their whole career. The Grateful Dead attracted fans who took to the road, following the band across the United States and creating an entire subculture that included its own language, space, drums, tapers, etc., traditions, fashions, and alternative lifestyle. Beyond the music, this subculture and the fans themselves became part of the product that attracted new fans. Marketing lesson from the Grateful Dead: establish a new category. In every industry, there is a barely indistinguishable herd of competitors that move in unison. Don't follow into that trap of moving in lockstep with that herd. Rather than try to outperform your competition in your existing industry, follow the Grateful Dead's recipe and create a new industry by reconstructing your market's boundaries. The problem with innovating within industry boundaries is that you end up spending huge sums of money trying to move the needle a few percentage points in terms of market share. When a boundary-changing newcomer comes along, companies in their mildly differentiated products lose tremendous market share and sometimes die, as seen when Blockbuster reacted too late to competition from the internet, broadband, and the content-on-demand services provided by cable companies and Netflix. The Grateful Dead teaches us that ignoring conventional wisdom is the key to creating uncontested market spaces. Y Combinator creates a new investor category. The most anxiety-inducing part of any startup is raising money from angel investors and venture capitalists. This process creates problems for founders for 4 reasons. 1. Founders spend a great deal of time wooing angel investors and VCs, time that could be spent building a product or selling to customers. 2. Investors and VCs often give founders more money than is needed in the early stages of a business, which means more dilution for the founders. 3. Investors insist on getting preferred stock, which has stronger rights than the founder stock. And 4, in order to watch their investment, outside investors want seats on the board and will make business decisions for the founders. Often these problems are so great that the startup ends up not getting funding or falling apart after it gets funding. Serial entrepreneur Paul Graham saw these problems and decided to change the experience by providing seed funding for startups by using a novel approach through his new company Y Combinator. First, instead of going through the dog and pony show that's typical of the investor wooing process, startups looking for seed money simply click a link to do a short online application from Y Combinator and fill it out. Y Combinator then invites the most promising founders in for a meeting and makes its funding decisions immediately after, dramatically reducing the time the founder needs to spend on raising money and dramatically increasing the time the founder can spend on building a great product or signing up early customers. Instead of investing in companies one at a time, Y Combinator invests in 2 batches per year, with many companies per batch. Because this batch size is large, Y Combinator invests a smaller amount of money than a typical angel or VC. In many industries, the costs associated with starting a business have dropped, so the smaller amount of money is just enough to prove the concept, and after that, the company will either keep going or shut down. The typical Y Combinator investment dilutes the founder 2% to 10%, as opposed to the typical 20% to 50% associated with angels or VCs. Y Combinator also buys the same type of stock as the entrepreneurs, common stock as opposed to preferred stock, which has far fewer strings attached. And finally, rather than take a board seat from which to watch the investment, Y Combinator requires all of the recipients to come to San Francisco, where the founders are groomed through a series of one-to-many seminars and boot camps over 2 months, a process likened to a startup business degree. This boot camp format is great for the young entrepreneurs they fund and is just the right level of involvement. Like the Grateful Dead and his music, slapping the VC or angel investor label on Y Combinator is difficult because what it offers is so different from what a typical VC or angel investor offers entrepreneurs wanting to start a company. Y Combinator has ignored traditional market boundaries and created its own category. Rock on, redefine your industry boundaries. Every industry has opportunities for creating new ways of doing business that can separate your company from your competition and place you in your own unique category. Just as Y Combinator put some real thought into how VC and angel funding wasn't helping startups and thus created a completely new category that is being followed by new groups such as Techstars, you too must develop a similar approach to your industry. Action. Redefining your industry boundaries is not an easy task. Rather than try to tell you how to do it, we will pose some questions for you to ask yourself to get your ideas flowing. In addition to thinking about your industry competitors, what are the alternatives to your product? Can you find ways to erase the traditional boundaries of your industry by incorporating or subsuming or competing with some of the alternatives? About the authors, Brian Halligan. I've seen the Grateful Dead perform more than 100 times. I am CEO and co-founder of HubSpot, a marketing software company that helps businesses transform the way they market their products by getting found on the internet. I'm also co-author of Inbound Marketing, Get Found Using Google, Social Media, and Blogs, and I'm an entrepreneur in residence at MIT. In my spare time, I sit on a few boards of directors, follow my beloved Red Sox, go to the gym, and I'm learning to play guitar. You can learn more about me at HubSpot.com or follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/bhalligan.
David Meerman Scott. Since my first Grateful Dead show when I was a teenager in 1979, I've seen the band perform over 40 times. I'm a marketing strategist and professional speaker. I'm the author of the Business Week best-selling book, The New Rules of Marketing and PR, and several other books. I speak at conferences and corporate events around the world. I love to surf, but I'm not really very good at it. I collect artifacts from the Apollo Moon program, and I maintain a database with 308 entries as of this reading of every band I've seen in concert. I'm a graduate of Kenyon College where I listened to a heck of a lot of Grateful Dead in my dorm room. You can learn more about me on my blog at www.webinknow.com. That's WEBINKNOW.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/DMScott.
This has been a Gildan audio production. For more affordable life-changing audio programs, visit our website at gildanmedia.com.